So, good evening, good evening, good evening, unless, of course, you're down under, in which case, well, you're 12 hours ahead of us nearly, probably, and you already know how this conversation has gone, and you can go back to bed. But for the rest of us, we're thrilled to be here for what I hope will be a very exciting Ashes post-mortem, and I have with me four remarkable players and analysers of cricket. Firstly, Mark Nichols, the voice and presence of Channel 5's sublime highlight and summing up programme. Welcome, Mark. Hampshire player, of course. And the newly crowned Special Achievement GQ Man of the Year, Stuart Broad. Nothing need extra be said. That great buccaneer right-handed batsman and athlete behind the sticks, Matt Pryor. The man they call the King of Swing, James Anderson. We've also assembled a wonderful gathering of cricket aficionados who may or may not contribute later on, but let's begin. I suppose the first thing I wanted to ask you is that Breathe Sport asked people before the Ashes series who was going to win. I think they asked 10 people, pundits. Not one of them gave England much of a chance. Why do you think that was? Do you, as a player, did you feel defensive about that?
I felt good about that, actually. I thought it worked in our favour. And I think if you looked at both teams' form going into the series, then you know, most bookmakers and pundits alike would have said Australia were the favourites, and I think for us that going in as underdogs actually helped us, and it let us play with more freedom and sort of took the pressure off us almost.
Is that how you felt, Stuart, as well, as the other player in the side?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I always think it's quite nice going into a sporting contest as underdogs because it takes a little bit of pressure off you. I remember getting to the Cardiff changing room and there was an A4 sort of brochure, not the England programme, but like a Glamorgan one, and they'd asked 5 different experts of the game, sort of Steve James, and everyone had said Australia will win the series by 3-0, 4-1, etc., etc. But that gave me quite a bit of motivation because there's something quite nice about proving certain people wrong. And I mean, we'd spent a lot of time where we went to Spain, but the momentum had gathered for us in the one-day series against New Zealand, and there was a real good feeling about our group. We were having a lot of fun, there was a lot of jokes going around. It was just, it felt relaxed but really excited and switched on. So anyone within the group wouldn't have had us down as underdogs because we just felt like something was happening.
And you're both bowlers, and obviously what happens when people predict a series is they repeat the obvious truth that 20 wickets need to be got in every test match in order to win. So only bowlers can win a test match, as it were. And there's more pressure on you, is that what you say?
I don't know if there's more pressure, but that's obviously the case. You need 20 wickets to win a game. We know that's our job to do that. And like Stuart said, we had a lot of confidence going into that. We'd had some good times as a team, a test side, with a tour to the West Indies and the New Zealand series. We'd won a couple of games, lost a couple, so we sort of, our form was indifferent, but we felt confidence and we felt like we were progressing as a team. So as we got to that first test at Cardiff, we felt high on confidence.
And Mark, you're an analyst. You are, I suppose, a pundit, a wise man. It's an Indian word. It's not an insult to call someone a pundit. Do you remember? Did you make a prediction? Are you on record somewhere? Can we find you saying England will win or Australia will win?
No, 3-1 Australia for me.
Was it? Yeah.
I didn't hear anybody predict an England win. I heard, I think it might have been Nasser Hussain went for 2-all in the Mail, I think, but I had 3-1. I mean, I think Australia were deservedly favourites. You know, they'd won convincingly at home 18 months earlier, 5-0. It was a resounding series, and then they'd beaten West Indies in the month prior to coming to England. England hadn't managed to do the same in the Caribbean a month before that. There were more question marks about the England side than the Australian side. I think that a big switch was Ryan Harris. A big switch in momentum of, if you like, bookies' odds happened when Ryan Harris pulled out of the series and in fact
That
retired
was
from the
the
game.
Glenn
I think
McGrath foot on the ball moment.
well, yeah, I mean, I suppose that's a parallel. And then I think probably picking 2 left-arm quicks was a mistake. I felt that limited the way Australia could attack England. So I think there was a switch. And then, of course, England's eagerness and lack of fear and sense of adventure during the Cardiff match definitely changed the ball game.
And Matt, it's come to you. I mean, I guess 2010-11 was probably, people thought England might not win in Australia there. You had that triumphant time yourself. It was probably your greatest period, wasn't it? So you know what it's like to be an underdog and to come out on top. How did you fancy England's chances for this rubber?
Yeah, and I think I was probably one of the only ones that said England were going to win. I said they were going to be 3-1, so unfortunately let me down at the Oval. And everyone I told that to, they thought I was crazy or biased or whatever it may be. But there were certain reasons for it, and one of them was exactly what the 2 guys to my side have said. The England dressing rooms that I played in, whenever we were the underdogs, we played our best cricket. When we were number one in the world, we were terrible. But whenever we were underdogs, whenever our backs were against the wall, we came out and played to a level better than anyone thought of us. The other thing that stood out for me was that Australia coming here had a huge amount of pressure on them. And there's a reason it is so hard to go abroad and win an Ashes series not in your home country. And it hadn't been done for 14 years, or the Aussies hadn't done it over here for 14 years. Now they came over and everyone was expecting them to win 5-0. Now, again, we had played in teams where we had turned up and people were expecting us to win 5-0. And it's quite a hard thing because if you don't, you win 3-0, but you've still failed. So that pressure of expectation is massive. And I thought that could potentially get to the Australians and be their undoing. So it was those 2 things for me, 2 reasons for me that I genuinely believed England had a chance.
Yeah, you're right. And it started in Cardiff, which was a great match and a great result. And I just wanted first to clear up for us non-professionals just exactly what it means to the nature of a series that the England captain can basically command each groundsman to prepare a pitch to his liking, unless it's Mick Hunt, who won't be told of Lords. Is that absolutely the case? Does it really make a difference? If, for example, Clark had the right to tell the groundsman to prepare the pitch earlier on, would that have altered the game? How much? What do you think?
Well, I think when we go to Australia, they prepare the pitches to suit their team.
Yeah.
And when we go to India, the same thing happens. So, a big deal was made of it in our conditions here that we were telling the groundsman to do this and that, which probably, I'm sure they offered an opinion, but it wasn't a case where we were saying you have to do this or have to prepare that. But at the same time, even if we did, everyone else in the whole world prepares pitches to give them home advantage, and I don't see why it should be any different here. We should prepare pitches that suit us.
It's not as if you prepared unplayable pitches.
Of course, yeah. We saw all the games. At some stage, guys got runs. Even the game when Broady bowled them out for 60, we then batted on it and got a decent total. So it wasn't as if it was unplayable. So I think there's certainly an element where I think we should have done it more in the past. We should do it more in the future.
Yeah. But I guess you can't rely on it. You can't say, we're going to win this because it's our kind of a pitch. You've still got to.
The thing about the Cardiff wicket, the second ball of the Test match didn't carry to the keeper.
No,
it bounced through 92 mile an hour and didn't carry to the keeper. And I think what happened in that Test match is, us as a team, we were so focused and switched on. I think we reacted to the conditions quicker than the Australians. So a big turning point for us was when Jimmy bowled 5-6 maidens on the bounce in the middle, and I think that we had them 1 down, weren't really going anywhere, and Jimmy said, right, let's just shut up shop for a little bit, let's put cover catcher in, let's let them go nowhere. Bowled 6 maidens, and then you got 1 wicket maybe, and then Stokesy came on and got 2 late, and that was us just realising that the pitch wasn't a wicket where you could bounce them out or really swing them out. We just had to contain. And then the Australians made the mistakes and we blew them away with the second new ball. So actually, I don't think the Cardiff wicket was a seamer's paradise by any stretch of the imagination. We adapted the conditions better, like they did at Lords, and each team did throughout the series.
And of course, Joe Root batted brilliantly and laid a foundation for a victory. How good
Well, he
is
did, but he was dropped on naught.
He was, yeah.
And
true.
England were 30 odd for 4 if Joe had got out then, isn't that right? And you know, who knows? I mean, how big a moment that was in the
Series.
You know, yeah. I mean, it is amazing how that one moment, that tiny moment, can be a turning point. And it was funny how Brad had in series, you know, had just suddenly gone, really. He didn't bat very well by his high standards, and then he had to miss the next test for the awful business with his daughter, and thankfully she seems to be improving, and now he's retired from the game. I mean, in sport, this business of when a team flips over the edge is impossible to predict. And it's a constant fascination to me in sport. When is a team just starting to go up the graph, and when is a team slipping over the edge of the graph? And it's just...
Sometimes it's the moment of their greatest achievement.
Yeah, I mean,
the
England
last
went,
thing they do.
England went as favourites to Australia when they lost 5-0 before. It was a hell of a good England side with a lot of exceptional cricketers, some of the best cricketers England have ever had collectively in a team. I would say that it ranked alongside, I mean, to be really boring, to go back to Peter May's side in '59, which was full of superstars, 58, 59, and got beaten 4-0. So it can happen. It's not something that just happens now. A team suddenly, for whatever reason, go over the edge, and you can't predict
obviously
when
the captain is one figure, linchpin in a side, and Paul Michael Clarke had a terrible season, and most people who love cricket are very fond of Michael Clarke, think he's a very wonderful, has been a wonderful cricketer in his time, and it was obviously great to see him fail in order to win the Ashes, but then it was hard not to feel sorry.
Some of the energy some of these guys had, you know,
Shane
guys
Watson
like Mark Wood and
the new guys,
Moeen Ali and these sort of blokes who brought a completely fresh perspective to the way they played, you know,
compared
the
to
way
Shane Watson
in an England shirt. You know, it's very hard to just transport yourself into an England shirt and play the game that is natural to you. It's very hard to do that in any sport, and they did it as if it was what you do every day. And that definitely empowered the side, I'm sure of it. Have their energy and their sense of humour in the case of Mark Wood and Moeen Ali's ability just to play cricket as if it was something, you know, it was fantastic. Really.
It's a really good point, especially about Mark Wood as well, because you watch him in his first Test match, and as we all know, yes, you have to have the talent, ability, the skill. But you've got to have the mentality for it as well. You've got to be able to go out there in front of however many thousand people, all the cameras, and actually love it and love being under that scrutiny and under that pressure. And some people step out in the middle and they could be the best player skill-wise, but if they can't enjoy that pressure, they're never going to make it.
I remember Jimmy knocking over one of the Zimbabwean batsmen 6 o'clock one evening when he began with his haircut at the time and his look. And he just, no, but seriously, he just had it, didn't he? He just had it. He looked a cool dude, and he knocked this guy. Ooh, when the ball swung around, he thought, "Crikey, how good's this?" You know, it's a fantastic thing when a young guy,
and obviously a good teammate. He's funny and the horse and the. But that 32 he made again, Mitchell Johnson bowling at his fastest. There was a really extraordinary spirit, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's an absolute delight to play with. He's as you said, with all the guys that have come into the team, Mark Wood, Ben Stokes. Fairly new to the side, Moeen Ali. It's just and Josh Butler as well. They've just been a breath of fresh air and really given the older guys a lot of energy and put smiles on people's faces in the team that you didn't realise could actually smile. So it's been refreshing and it's great. And they've obviously got, as we've said, they've got the talent to perform at international level, but also they've got a great character to go with it.
And that's one of the things that people will always say about this series, well, the pompous purists will say, oh, it really wasn't that good a series. It was fantastic entertainment. It was wonderful to watch. To say that it wasn't a good series is silly, but it was extraordinary, and it makes you question how much a modern professional test side is able to recover from a bad first innings anymore, or from a bad, because the story of all of the matches seemed to be the side that got the upper hand once kept it forever, and so we come to Lords, and all that confidence could easily have melted away. It must have been a very distressing 4 days, those at Lords, for you. I mean, just not getting any results against Steve Smith 200, and then none of our batsmen being able to provide much either.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of blew the word momentum out of sport, didn't it, the whole series? But, I mean, I think the mentality's changed in Test cricket. So, to use Cardiff as an example, we got a decent score first innings, we bowled Australia out with, 60, 70 lead, maybe? And Trevor, the coach, stopped everyone before the openers put their pads on and said, look, guys, you're not going out here to see off the new ball, you're not going to protect our position, you're not going to try and defend here. Go get me some runs. I want you to play your natural game, but go get me some runs. We're ahead of the game. Let's send a message here and move the game forward. And actually, young guys coming into the game love that sort of language. And I saw Ian Bell, 100 Test veteran. He just grew. Like he was like, right, I'm going to go and hit the ball, and he got a cracking 60 thing. But just that mentality of just go and play, just go and express yourselves and move the game forward. And we immediately, from that moment, we weren't thinking, well, if we got bowled out for 120 now, we could lose. We just said, well, let's go and get 250 as quick as we can, and let's get bowling again, because we're going to win this game. And I think that was a great message to send us in Trevor's first real sort of speech to the team, but in his first Test match, that was a great message to send us.
It is, and I think you've beautifully defined what people mean when they talk about this New England approach and this New England. It is that. It's not just being reckless, but it's expressing yourself in sport and having fun. I spoke to a Costa Rica football manager once about Costa Rica's ludicrous appearance in the last 8 in the World Cup, which is against all possible outcomes. So smaller population in Scotland, and what were they doing there? And they very nearly beat the Netherlands. Should have done, perhaps. And he said, well, it's very simple, you know, we tell them to laugh. And I said, sorry? He said, yes, you have to laugh. If you're not laughing, you will never win. You have to laugh. That's extraordinary. And Costa Rica did laugh, and they got us a long way.
It's an unlikely matchup, you and the Costa Rica football.
It worked. We had a lot in common, surprisingly. But it chimes with what Jimmy and Stuart were saying about the spirit in the England camp at the beginning and in Spain and so on. There was a lot of laughter, and that's got to be. So you must have found that when you played, that, as you said, if you're not enjoying yourself, if you're not laughing, you're not going to be winning, are you?
Yeah, I remember back in 2009 where we had a pretty bad period as an England team. Coach had left, new captain. We were in the West Indies, just been bowled out for 51. Things couldn't get much worse. And I distinctly remember a team meeting then. Andrew Strauss led it, and there were a couple of things that really stood out. And one was that he believed that it needed to be a player-led environment, and that was really, really important. That the players made decisions about how they wanted to train, how they wanted to. Of course, the coaches there and the support staff are there to do exactly that, support the team. But ultimately, the responsibility lies on the players. But the other big thing was we had to have fun. We had to enjoy ourselves, and we tried to create an environment that was like playing club cricket on a Saturday or Sunday, but you just happened to be at the Oval or Lords or somewhere else. And those were the two major, as I say, points that stood out for me. And that's the attitude that we took over the next few years, and had quite a fair bit of success with it. And
just while you're talking about that, because it worked very well in your era and for you, obviously, I was very impressed that Josh Buttler didn't seem to lose his humour, despite obviously what must have been distressing results for him as a batsman. He didn't really perform at any level in any innings, really, in the way that one had hoped he might. But he stayed doing what is 90% of a wicket-keeper's job, it seems, to gee up the forces around him, the slip cordon and everybody else, and to do a little bit of getting at the batsman as well as obviously stopping the ball and stumping and catching and all the rest of it. Do you think he, aside from his run getting, do you think he is a true wicket-keeper, and we shouldn't look anywhere else?
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, a guy with that amount of ability is incredible, and you want to nurture him. You want to give him opportunities, and most importantly, you want him not to change his natural game.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things you can find yourself, especially when you aren't scoring runs, chasing runs, and right, how do I get there? And what you end up doing is thinking, okay, I've got to give myself a chance. So you start playing quite defensively to try and get in, and you hear commentators and pundits saying, "Oh, give yourself a chance. You've got to get in. You can't go and hit the ball from hit boundaries from ball one. But actually, I think for Joss, it's got to be the other way around.
Yeah.
You've got to throw caution to the wind. He's that good that he's got to just keep playing attacking. And these two will tell you as well, there's nothing worse than a batsman coming at you and putting pressure on you. You run in and bowl your best ball and they smash it through cover. That puts a huge amount of pressure on you.
We had the depth of batting to allow that as well.
Without a shadow of a doubt. But, been there myself where it's a tricky position because you're wanting to keep as well as you possibly can. But you can't get away from the fact that you need to score runs. Nowadays, a wicket-keeper within international cricket, you have to score runs, and ultimately you'll be judged more on that probably than your wicket-keeping. But there is no doubt Joss is the future of English cricket from the wicket-keeping point of view, wicket-keep batsman point of view.
Does one affect the other? If you're struggling with the bat, do you lose confidence with the gloves, or vice versa?
I think it can put more pressure on the other, but the other way of looking at it, the way I try to look at it is, okay, I've scored no runs, I've got a huge opportunity I've got a second chance to affect the game in a positive way with the gloves, and vice versa. If you've not had a great day with the gloves, you can go out and score runs and make up for the mistakes you made. So it's a bit of a catch-22 where I suppose it's how you approach it. But as I say, I always try to think of it, right, that didn't work for me, but now I've got an opportunity to, as I say, affect the game in a positive way with either bats or...
But your mentality was quite interesting because batting with you just wanted to get to 20 as quickly as you could, because you found if you hit a few boundaries early, they'd put deep point back, deep square back, and then you'd get away with maybe a slice off or a clip to third man. So your mentality was, I'm just going to go out and get to 20, and then batting will become easier, rather than noodle your way to 10, didn't you? So you just try and flay it through point, and if you got caught...
Exactly. So
he always used to walk past me, and I walked past him and go, sorry,
It
mate.
was 80 or nothing with Matt Pryor.
There was a little bit. And where that came from was, back in the day, and talk about stats or whatever, but there was a stat, I was at Loughborough with the England Academy, and there was a stat that came out that the top 10 best batsmen in the world at the time, and that was sort of Tendulkar, Gilchrist, Hayden, Ponting, I imagine, was probably in there. They got to 20. It wasn't they got more hundreds or double hundreds or triple hundreds. They got to 20, 75% more often than the rest of the world. So I went, okay, let's just get to 20 then. I then thought 20 and 5 balls is a good option, so let's give that a go. But that was pretty much how I went about it. Right, and some days you got to 20 quickly, and other days it took ages. But it was just get to 20. And the thing I found over a period of time, that was more often than not, if I got to 20, I went on to get a score. The amount of times I got out 0 to 19, there were a lot. But if I got to 20, then managed to get on.
It's funny, cricket, isn't it? Because I think more than any other sport, there are these greybeards who sit in the pavilions, and some of them even sit in TMS commentary boxes, who moan when a batsman gets out, as they see it, recklessly and irresponsibly. And they tend to talk about professional athletes, sportsmen like yourselves, as if you're schoolboys and that you really are in trouble now, and that was very naughty and you should report to someone. Does it kind of get you, this constant barrage of annoying criticism? I mean, I would just go insane. I mean, put it this way, if I'm an actor, right, well, I think I am, all right, and I do a performance that may or may not be good, somewhere on an arts page that nobody reads is a small column where someone says, reviewing a rather disappointing something by Stephen Fry, and I'll go, oh, boo-hoo. But then, to remind myself of how lucky I am, I go to the back of the newspaper, and it goes, England's Day of Shame. And you think, whoa, just a minute. They really do treat you as if as if you're moral failures, and I would just...
Well, we do exactly the opposite. We turn straight to your review.
Very good, yeah. But just the thing I've always wanted to know, because I'm curious like this, is when you're wandering around in the half light of the back of the pavilion, and the long lens is on you, and you've been, you're out or something, and you walk past, and there's the lid of a laptop, and you stop and you look at it, and you fiddle with it. What are you looking at? Is it your statistics? Is it how you were out? Is it? I don't know, is it
Solitaire.
Asian boob 7? I don't know. Well, you're quite. Is there Is there sort of proprietary software in there that you look at? What is it mostly?
Oh, it's the replay of the dismissal generally.
It is.
Yeah, I mean that's a good example actually. The fact that people go and watch the computer straight after they've got out is because they're their biggest critic, and that they know, how they've got out or what went wrong, or they're trying to sort out if there's a technical flaw there. They go and look at the computer and they try and iron it out for the next innings. And I think we're all our biggest critic, and that's why we try. If someone writes in the paper that we're 5 out of 10 or even worse sometimes, it doesn't really matter, because you know whether you've played well or not, and you know what you've got to do to put that right in the next game.
And is this a feed from the broadcaster, from Sky, or it is, and you just obviously keep the separate bits of your.
Actually, generally the guys use it as a positive. So a lot of the batsmen will come in the morning and watch. You can click like what you want to watch, plays and misses, whatever. But you could click boundaries, so you could watch a whole summer's worth of boundaries.
Wow.
So, like, I know as a bowler, before every test match, the night before, I go to bed with the iPad, and I've got my test wickets in the last 2 years. So I just watch wickets. So it's like me watching me taking wickets.
Your wife must be so happy.
but it's a mentality of
no, it's brilliant.
Getting like positive reinforcement, I think. So I know like Joss and Belly, they like to just watch them hitting cover drives. So Belly will click cover drives and he'll just go boom, and he'll see himself.
He does do the best cover drives in the business,
Very rarely do guys go, like Jimmy's not going to click on it and go, let me watch myself getting it for 4. Rarely the guys will go that far into looking at negatives. It's pretty much used as a positive tool.
And analysis too, isn't there? There's block areas to bowl at certain people, and
areas is the word, the sort of word of the year, I've noticed. We've been bowling in areas.
You can't get away from this man every time when he gets out as well, storming in, going, "That wasn't out."
Oh, you're one of those, are you?
That was not out.
Do you throw
everything? That was not. And then he watches it and he goes, "That was not out."
Do you throw your bat across the room and all that?
No. I've never done that really. We've got Ben Stokes in our team. So.
Oh yes, God. So let's just move on. Well, we looked at the first 2 matches. Now, so it's 1 each, and you go to Edgbaston.
Love how we've gone past Lords. Yeah,
well, I sort of mentioned it. I wasn't going to go into that much detail. We were just saying it wasn't. It wasn't the track for you. Is a silly way of putting it, really, because you've played at Lords many times, all of you, and you've had terrific results at Lords. I know. You. There was that evening where you bowled, and everyone said, "Someone tell his father he's bowling too short," and then the next morning you got 3, didn't you? What was that? When was that? 2009.
Oh, I don't know.
I think so. Yeah.
You must have been a bit traumatic losing at Lords like that. There must have been a sense of, have we blown what we achieved in Cardiff in terms of the mental high ground? I mean, it must have been pretty difficult for you.
Well, I think we had a bit of a... So those 2 tests were back to back, and we had a bit of a gap between Lords and Birmingham. So we all went home for about 5 days, if I remember, and then we got back together. And Trevor, again, the way he was putting it was, right, we're all square, so we're back where we started. So we're starting again, we're sort of back to square one. So it was as if we just completely forgot about that and moved on to that Birmingham game, put all our energies just into that one game.
So as a bowling unit, you didn't think, well, we couldn't get the ball to move the way we usually do. It wasn't a green top, it wasn't swinging in the air much. It was just the usual hill business, but we weren't really making it talk.
Well, me and Stuart have played often enough that we've been for 100 before. We've played in games where teams have got 700, so we weren't particularly worried. It does happen.
There was one over, wasn't there, Stuart? Yeah. Sorry.
I switched off a bit there.
Yeah. You're saying you've known the good and the bad. There was an over, which you probably don't like remembering.
Yeah.
So you've all known highs and lows.
So we tried to draw on that experience and know that whatever happened at Lords doesn't necessarily, it's not going to affect the outcome of the Birmingham game. Right. So we then focused completely on that and how we were going to turn things around.
And I did have probably the highlight of my series. Jimmy was driving us to the ground on the second morning at Lords. Australia with 337 for 1. So we're both like sore, got our smart shoes on and feet are aching, and we're following this massive Great London bus all the way into the ground, where Jimmy's staring at me from an advertisement Wellman advertising saying, "I feel fantastic." And I keep looking at him, and I'm looking to my right, and every time we get stuck in traffic, he puts his head back. This couldn't be far more wrong, really.
Whoa, whoa. So yeah, black humour, and it was a bad loss. 405 runs, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. Whatever. Well, you weren't counting. Yeah. And so then to Edgbaston, and it was which was a particularly wonderful match for you. I think everyone felt that they had never seen swing bowling quite so perfectly executed. Did you immediately know you were in the groove?
I can't remember really. I think I remember there being a lot more life in the pitch than there was at Lord's, and you know, maybe I did get in the groove, and I think when you get a few edges, there were some really poor shots in there as well, which helped.
Yeah.
And you know, you go from having your day, not having your day at Lord's, and then you get a day where everything goes for you, and you get the rub of the green. So. You know, guys leaving straight balls and things like that, which really helps. So yeah, it was just one of those days, and in the second innings, Stephen Finn got 6 for, and that was his day. And I think we all bowled really well throughout that game, and it just so.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, over the series, it's the first time in any Test cricket, not just Ashes cricket, that 4 different bowlers had 6-fers. I think I'm right in saying, isn't it? Stokes, Ben Stokes, and yourself, and obviously Stuart and Stephen.
Yeah,
rather wonderful.
Yeah, it was great to be involved in. I think we said at the start of the series, you're not going to win a 5-test series with just 11 players, and you're going to need that strength in depth. So Finney came in for a couple of games. Towards the end of the series, we have Mark Wood at the start. And everyone bowled really well, and it was just fantastic to watch. And
to talk about Stephen Finn, because he's clearly a deeply loved man. Everyone likes him. He's just an amiable, likeable man, and he went as low as a bowler could go in Australia, and it looked as if his career was over. And he was, as it were, rebuilt like the Bionic Man. And so there was a great, presumably, pleasure for all of you to see him back to form.
Definitely, yeah. We've all experienced what Finney's gone through, and we felt for him when he was struggling. But Finney's a perfectionist, and he's always searching for that perfect action or perfect delivery, as I'm sure a lot of bowlers do and have done in the past. And he's continued to do that. He's worked so hard to get back to where he is now. And yeah, like you said, everyone was delighted for him when he got
even bowling wonderfully in the ODIs as he did yesterday.
It's one of sports. It may be a sportsman's greatest achievement, the bounce back, the team's effort after Lord's, in a way Australia's effort after Cardiff, Steve Finn's bounce back, Matt Pryor's second coming as a international cricketer. I mean, to come back, particularly from injury and despair, which is people would never know about rehab. They'd never know about days and nights on your own wondering if you'll ever play the sport you love properly again, if you'll ever reach that level of performance, that attention you get with a full house. It's an amazing thing, a bounce back. It takes not just obviously physical strength, but it takes enormous mental strength to find your way back and perform again. Because when you have got yourself back, guys, you've then got to perform, haven't you? You're ready, you're fit, you're ready to go, and you suddenly think, how's it going to come out? What if I get hit for 4? And then, so many doubts can cloud performance.
Yes, and Jimmy, I suppose we always turn to your famous intercostal muscles, which sadly went at the end of the Edgbaston match, and you pulled up, and you knew instantly, it seems, and all the commentators who had been bowlers seemed to know as well, that it's not just a stitch or a strain in the side. It's something that puts you out of action for some time. And are you confident that you're going to be fully back to fitness when you're next going to be called on, which will be South Africa again? Emirates.
Well, I'm hopefully going to play for Lancashire at the end of this season.
Oh wow!
Which would be good. I'm fully fit now. But yeah, it's frustrating at the time, and I've never done an intercostal before, a side muscle before, so I was kind of a bit worried about it. Brody was actually at mid-off telling me not to stop bowling because he's experienced that before.
Oh, you've had one.
Well, he said, I'm struggling to breathe a bit. I said, well, that's a bit strange, Jim. And he goes, I'll give it another go. And you were swinging it a bit, weren't you, to Mitchell Johnson at the time, was it? Beat the bat. He goes, I feel tight. I said, please stop, because this, like, I was thinking if you can get away with a week, if it's just a bit of a pain, you'll be fine. But if you bowl it, because in Australia I felt the same. I felt like a bit of a twinge, like don't know what was happening. I bowled 3 or 4 overs and it just blew up. I had 8 weeks out. So I was like, get off. He goes, I'll give it one more. And you ran in, and I'm thinking at mid-off going, well, I want to almost like dive on the wicket and say stop. But you pulled out, didn't you? You got to sort of your jump and just went, I'm not sure about this, and walked off. I think that was, I mean, really, if it was 2-all coming into the oval, I think you'd have probably played, personally. So you didn't do major damage that you could have done if you'd have bowled another over. But the side injuries as a bowler, it's your worst nightmare.
I mean, you've both got particularly sort of what you might call classic actions, very, very fluent and sideways on, and very textbook. They're not like, it's not like you can say maybe it's something in my action that I better sort out that's causing this pain. It's just something that happens. I mean, injuries just do happen. I've been very fortunate the last 5 years or so that I've not had any injuries. So you just got, you've got to accept that it does happen, and there could be a number of reasons for it. And it's just one of those things you've got to deal with. At least it's not stress fractures, which some bowlers get. Yeah. So you're both fit and ready for the next one. But Edgbaston was a remarkable victory. I mean, it was a you really squashed them, and after having been so comprehensively beaten at Lords, that must have really made you confident. Did you? Well, not you at the end of the match, obviously.
I think the atmosphere at Edgbaston made the team confident. So we had a lot of young guys in the first Ashes series. I mean, the Edgbaston was incredible, wasn't it? I mean, the stands were, when Finney was running on his hat-trick ball, it was one of the loudest I've ever heard.
The Hollis
and I think
in particular.
Edgbaston does that to you. It's an atmosphere that you feel like the whole world is backing you.
And all those young guys that were, their first Ashes series, they said this is the best atmosphere I've ever played, and they just couldn't believe that they're actually a part of it. And I think that's a great thing to have, that sort of.
And you can see all the wickets. You see everyone. There's a picture where Finney's, I think, belly caught a catch off Finney, and everyone's arms are in the air chasing Finney. The emotion that the crowd gave us flowed into our wicket celebrations, I think. And I mean, I always say judge a team by how they celebrate wickets, because if they're right up for it, everyone goes up. And I think throughout this whole series, every player has been right on the money for us.
That's very interesting. You can actually see it. Saw it yesterday at the ODI as well. I have to say, extraordinary.
The bowling performances will always be remembered, but his partnership with Moeen Ali.
Yes, that was
which was
absolutely
worth 70
vital.
Odd, I guess. I think 75.
More, more. I think, yes.
That was spectacular, and the crowd were rocking on that, weren't they, with every boundary, and that was. I think that really set the Australians back. They'd sort of getting themselves back into the match a bit, and then you took it away.
You'd shut them out,
Yeah, I mean, he's great to bat with. He's a real pleasure to play with, because he's a free spirit. So genuinely, he'll be out there. Actually, Matt used to do the same. He'd just go, I'm going to try every ball for 4. I'm like, Mo, like, it's 1-all. It's quite a real, it's quite an important stage. I reckon if we get through Mitchell here, you take most of the strike, and then we'll reassess when the spinner comes on. And then the next ball I think went over Mitchell's head for 4. He's just got this amazing belief.
That's what Adam Gilchrist did, isn't it?
Yeah,
Adam Gilchrist killed people with that. Then Matt,
becoming number 9 and doing
devastating. Well, that's right, 8 and 9 doing it.
His theory was that if I'm trying to hit every ball for 4, I'll get in better positions to then defend. But once his adrenaline gets going, he seems to forget about this defensive shot. But he's such a nice striker of the ball.
And it was good to see you batting well, because obviously there were times when you first entered cricket you were spoken of as a complete all-rounder, and then it became apparent you were concentrating more on your bowling. But do you still put in a lot of net time for batting, and do you still care about it?
Yeah, I mean, I've never looked at myself as someone who's going to be like a big run getter. I just try and change momentums of the game. So there's times where I prefer to get 20 off 8 balls and just try and put the opposition on the back foot. And there's times where, I mean, Matt and I shared a 50 partnership where I got 0.
Wow.
And it was like, let's just try and sort of shut the game down.
Yeah.
So I almost try and annoy the opposition with my batting. I know I haven't got the strongest defence. I know that I can throw my hands through the ball, but I mean, we used to share some great partnerships where we'd just say, let's try and cause chaos. So that Matt would try and steal 2 to find leg when there's never 2. I don't know, and that would get us going, wouldn't it? And I'm always better when I'm not thinking about building an innings. I'm thinking, right, let's just be annoying little bugger here and see how we go.
Yeah. Well, do what the opponent least wants you to do is a very good rule of tactics, isn't it, in any game. So there you were, 2-1 up, and Trent Bridge, your home ground, and there was no Jimmy Anderson, and everyone was going, well, without Jimmy, I don't think really this is. It's not the same. It's not the same thing at all. And something extraordinary happened that first day. It's going to be a record for a very, very long time in the dismissal of the Test side before lunch. I don't know, what sort of mood were you in when you took the ball? I could do some good here. Or
no, I was pretty grumpy because I wanted to bat. I mean, we've played quite a bit of Test cricket at Trent Bridge, and we've won. We actually got a fantastic record there, but done batting first a lot of the time. Yeah. And I mean, the wicket was green, but actually when we were warming up, it wasn't particularly overcast. But as the toss got closer, it started to draw in. Yeah. And Cookie said, right, we're definitely going to have a bowl. We got to here. And I think I settled down. Shane Warne walked past me, he would bat 100% of the time as a leg spinner and everything. And he said, do you know, I consider a bowl here. And I said, well, that probably means it's a 100% bowl. Yeah. And Cookie won the toss and had a bowl. I mean, it was, I mean, there was extra pressure for sure, because I think I've not bowled the first over a Test match before. I've played all my Test cricket apart from 4 with Jimmy, and he always takes the first over. So I was
back.
You've been holding him back. Yes.
I was nervous. I was really nervous.
Nervous, interesting.
I was nervous, but it was. I don't know. I think the first wicket just settled me down. The pitch just did that perfect amount. It didn't beat the bat. I think we had 1 player miss and 7 edges. It just did that sort of half a bat amount, and we created pressure and took our catches.
And one of those catches in particular caused a violent eruption on your face, which was will live with you forever, and there will be tea towels and plates and other things with that engraved on it. But yes, Ben Stokes' catch was one of the truly great catches in recent memory, wasn't it? The Strauss catch and a few others. It's
the best one I've seen live, I think, because I mean, from a bowler's point of view, when you catch the edge, you have a gut feeling of what's going to happen, and my vision was Lively had turned to go and chase it to third man. It felt like it was too thick a edge to go to any of the slips, and it was almost behind Stokesy already, but he sort of dived backwards, and he's got this really nasty broken finger that he had from 3 or 4 years ago, and had a bad surgery on it, so it's quite swollen. He calls it the claw. And it actually did stick in his claw. If it wasn't for a bad surgery, he probably wouldn't have caught that. But it was, I mean, it was the best catch I've seen live. But I think even over the last few weeks, the ECB account have tweeted pictures of him in practice, and he does do that sort of thing. It was shock on my face that, wow, that was so special to witness from 22 yards. Yeah. But actually, he does that in practice, and he's an amazing athlete. He is a fantastic cricketer, and we're very lucky to have him.
I so agree. When Edgbaston ended, you failed in one regard, and that is you didn't get your 300th Test wicket and joined the club of what you would make a club of 5 England cricketers who made 300 Test wickets. But by the time Trent Bridge was over, you'd not only taken 300, you'd overtaken Fred Truman, hadn't you, I think? Do players pay much attention to that kind of thing? I mean, we know Wayne Rooney pays attention to the goal-scoring record, for example. Does the wicket-taking record matter?
I mean, it's certainly something you're aware of, but, I mean, joining that sort of company is extremely special. I mean, I got a text off my dad, so it must have been pretty good. But yeah, I mean, you're joining obviously Jimmy, Beefy, Bob, Fred Truman. they're names that will live with English cricket forever. So it is a very special club to join. And actually, your 400th wicket was you were eager to get it, weren't you? And it's almost like you wanted to get it out of the way so you could continue going. And it's not something that particularly plays on your mind, but it's something that you almost want to just skip past. Like, yeah, let's get it done so I can crack on and just relax and get into the spell. So I think getting it so early in the innings just helped me relax and go. But also, home advantage plays a big part. I've bowled a lot of overs at Trent Bridge at that end. I just felt comfortable there. And as I say, the wicket was perfect. But it's something that when you're playing, you're not particularly focused on and you're not really bothered by. But it's also a very special club to join.
It is, and you without being too sycophantic, you will be legends of England bowling. You just, whether you like it or not, you will. You're still playing, so it seems wrong to say that. But you know, I grew up. You know, there were in swing bowling. Alec Bedser was the name everyone conjured with. Was a great player, and there was Fred Truman, of course. And there will be children chanting your names.
Definitely. I mean, they're right up there with anybody.
No question.
And
yeah.
his, I
That
mean,
8 for 15
you can
that was the
reasonably
first
argue
innings.
that outside of Jim Laker's match in 1956, that's the greatest England bowling performance ever.
Yeah.
You can perfectly reasonably argue that, and you'd be hard pressed not. You'd win your argument. You win 8 for 15 in an hour to win the Test match.
Yeah. It's insane.
That's a pretty good effort.
Yeah, it is. It's a pretty good effort, and it was a triumphant match, and it meant that the Ashes were ours. I say ours, yours, and so the celebration at the end was the celebration of the winning of the Ashes. And you watched, of course, you were there, and you must have been thrilled, but part of you must have been damned annoyed as well.
Yeah, of course. I was. Firstly, you know, I was really frustrated not actually being out there with Broady when he got his 300th wicket, because we've experienced pretty much every one of our wickets together, and we've built up a really good partnership over the years. So it was great for me. You know, I was delighted that I was there to see it, but I'd have loved to be at mid-off when he did get that.
I did wave at you, but I think you were making a brew out the back.
Yeah, I was on the brew run at the time. But what was the question?
No, but it was an extraordinary experience to watch the team, your people.
Yeah.
I
would have loved to have been playing in those last two games, but you know, I think when you're not playing, you sort of you're a fan. You're a supporter of the team, and I was, you know, I'd have loved to have been 15 pints down with the rest of the fans out there, but I was having a cup of tea watching it, which was a bit different. But it was fantastic to be there and experience it, and experience the of what it meant for everyone.
It was a great moment actually when we went straight after Mark Wood took that last Ashes wicket, went up to the change room, came back down to walk around the ground and just sort of say thanks to the fans. Obviously Jimmy's record at Trent Bridge is unrivaled, isn't it? I mean, I don't know, you'll know what it is, but
it's your ground, it's
I've
your
no
personal territory.
I've no idea.
What's Travis like, 19? But so we walk out as a 12, and as we walk out, the whole stand, first stand we get to, started singing Jimmy, Jimmy, Jimmy Anderson, which I mean I found very special. You must have found remarkable, really. And I think that summed up how much the English fans wanted Jimmy there, wanted Jimmy playing, and and the Trent Bridge fans want.
Yeah. Talking of the England fans, it is interesting. They're wonderful, the grief they give Mitchell Johnson, especially at Edgbaston. I mean, hilarious. He took it very well, and it was great. But you don't get much Barmy Army anymore, because the Barmy Army was all about an ironic acceptance that England could never win anything. So they just go Barmy Army, Barmy Army, Barmy Army, like that, while Atherton's men strained to put together any kind of performance.
That won't make it on the QI, will it?
And now fans are, I think they seem to be better informed. They you know, they really connect with the game in a wonderful way. Did you get that impression? What about you, Matt?
Yeah, well, on that day in Trent Bridge, it was my first day at the cricket not working. So I was sat there that morning.
So you're drunk.
It's the toughest question I've had in the last 6 months. Yeah, and it was incredible. And for however many years, a lot of people said to me, "Oh, you got the best seat in the house," and I didn't really know what that meant as a wicket keeper, but I literally did have the best seat in the house, because sat in the crowd I couldn't see anything. You talk about that Ben Stokes catch, I mean, it just flies, and it's, oh, what happened? Oh, there, and yeah, you have to wait for the sort of highlight
replay.
package and everything else. But yeah, that being in the middle is quite literally the best place in the world. It's yes, you can be in the crowd, you can be in with the fans and everything else, but you don't feel the whole ground. You can hear everyone around you, but you can't hear the whole ground. In the middle, when you hear it all going off, it's just the best feeling in the world. And the England fans, to be fair, they do it well.
They do well. I mean, they have stump mics and all the rest of it. We don't hear the wicketkeeper sledging particularly, or even doing much more than clapping hands. Oh, you do you?
Well, we get it turned
from your
up
Channel
in
5
our,
mic. Yeah.
But
So
don't worry, you're safe with me. No, we can hear, when the keeper stands up to the stumps, you can hear everything.
Right.
The stump mics are they're crystal clear.
So more than
When
just
the
the
guys
usual
are
"come
standing
on,
back.
lads," which is what usually there's the clapping of the gloves.
Did you say a bit more than "come on, lads"?
Yeah, a bit more than that. Yeah.
There's a bit more than "come on, lads." But it's okay. It's fine. I haven't heard anything. There are moments that you wouldn't recommend, but there haven't been recently. You know, there's a lot of nonsense talked about. Well, I think there is. You tell me. You play. There's a lot of nonsense talked. There are moments that are unpleasant, and they seem to have drifted away. I mean, there's been some personal vendettas that have been carried out, but generally, I feel that, particularly this summer, the way the game was played was dead right, wasn't it? So between the teams, there seemed to be.
The spirit was good. You felt?
Yeah, it was great. I think the way the game's going, there's going to be less and less sledging because of the stump. Everyone's aware of the stump mics. If you get caught on camera sledging or anything, then you get pulled into the match referee's office. So there's going to be less and less
There's
of
got
that.
to be room for characters, hasn't there? You can't squash personality, surely. I mean, there's a dividing line, I accept, between behaviour that isn't good for cricket, but there's also behaviour that is a fantastic spectacle. Yeah. When guys are going at each other and staring each other down.
The great example of that was Wahab Riaz in the World Cup against Shane Watson. It was an unbelievable contest.
Brilliant.
Bowling bouncers, they were sledging each other, going at each other. They both got pulled in afterwards and got fined for that. So that's going to, that was great entertainment and great to watch. But
Rod Marsh gave the Spirit of Cricket lecture a week or so ago and gave exactly that example and said everybody was captivated, both in the ground and on television, and the guys get fined for it. How ridiculous is that? You know, you've got to get that balance right. You don't want to take away the emotional excitement of the game that the players are prepared to give us through their own performance.
The big thing for me with all of this is, look, fans want greater accessibility now to professional sports. When you look at Twitter, you look at everything else. Stump mics are now turned up, which are going to make players go into their shells, not get into that battle. But the real sad thing for me is when players then take it off the pitch themselves and start sitting in press conferences and saying, well, he said this and I said that, and there's an unwritten rule that what goes on the pitch stays on the pitch, and you've got to play with that trust as well.
There's a trade-off between.
It's competition. It's Australia versus England. Of course, you're not going to see eye to eye, and who here would want that to happen? You know, yes, there is a spirit of cricket. Yes, you have to play in the right spirit, but for me, it's a battle on the pitch, and then it stays on the pitch. And then even more important is you go off the pitch, you're able to shake hands, have a beer, and talk about the battle you've just had.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's just see if anyone in the audience has a question. I can see we've got a. Well, we've got a Yorkshireman I can see in the front row, Phil. Phil Thompson, what would you like to say?
Thanks, Stephen. I promised you I wouldn't mention Yorkshire on a day like this, especially with Jimmy sitting there. But I'm feeling very, very proud. Stephen and I spend quite a lot of time at the moment trying to balance nostalgia versus evolution within our business lives. I just wondered whether you guys on the stage there have felt that maybe we've got to a stage where we need 3 England cricket teams, a T20, an ODI and a test team. Because the very fact that you two guys are sitting there, I know Jimmy's been injured, but the very fact that you're sitting there now means you're not playing in the ODI international series. And it kind of feels a bit like after the Lord Mayor's parade to me. And I think we need to kind of differentiate between the 3. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, anyone want something to say about it? Jimmy?
Yeah, well, I think from an England point of view, we're the only country in the world that plays all year round, the only Northern Hemisphere team, so we play 12 months of the year, and that at some point is going to take its toll. You see other teams around the world, they'll get 6 months off at some point. So South Africa, for example, they get guys like Dale Steyn, Morne Mokel, they'll play all their cricket because they've had that break and they're fit and ready to go for whatever they've got in the 6 months where they do play. So there's something's going to have to give, and we've seen Joe Root's been rested for this series. Joss Butler's now taken the last few games off, so something at some stage is going to give. And unfortunately, the way it is, the amount of cricket we play, you're either going to get injured or you're going to need a rest. So it's whether that is separating all 3 teams, I'm not sure. But
do you not think we've got to the stage where we need a formal acknowledgement of that particular issue? Because you're just going to wear yourselves out. The intensity at which you're playing at test level is truly remarkable, and I don't see how you can possibly do it as professional athletes.
I don't know, because your best players are still your best players. So Ricky Ponting, you'd want to see him in a test shirt and a one-day shirt and a T20 shirt. So from a fan's point of view, I think you want to go and watch the best players play, don't you?
Obviously, from a fan's point of view, I'm looking at it from the player's perspective. It just seems to be incredibly intense these days.
It is intense, but I mean, this year's a bit of a freak. We've got 16 test matches, which is very high. So even from January, I remember Peter Moore sat me down and said, look, we've got a lot of test cricket here. You're not going to be able to play everything. And that was set aside. I mean, we're lucky as players now that we don't just play till we get injured. We're looked after by the ECB. I think central contracts have played a huge part in that. You look at someone like Freddie's career, he pretty much played till he went to surgery, came back, played till he went to surgery. Whereas if he'd have played now, I think he'd have probably been a bit more balanced and maybe got a couple more years out of him. But yeah, I mean, I certainly understand from the fans' point of view, you want to see the best players play, but you can't, Jimmy says, right, you can't play everything because you'd start the year at 6'6" and end up at 5'6". There's a lot of cricket.
Is there a danger that some players who play ODI, who are knocking at the door at the test side, are kind of rule themselves out by being very good at ODI players, like maybe Hales and Roy, who are opening for the ODI side? They'd like a look at what seems to be a vacant opening bat position in the test side. But if they're too much sort of schooled in ODI, people might go in the way that you get players who just consider one-day players. Paul Collingwood, obviously Owen Morgan. They're just one-day players. The name gets stuck. You're a one-day player, and you don't get a chance of moving up.
I actually think it helped me a lot playing ODI cricket before Test cricket, because I got a feel for what international cricket was like before receiving my Test cap. So my first involvement with 3 lines on my chest wasn't in a Test match. So I almost felt more relaxed going into that, which at the start of my career, that really helped me. But I mean, that was 9 years ago. That can change a huge amount. I don't know what you guys felt. You both played one-day cricket before Test cricket, didn't you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think a few years ago there was probably more chance of that happening, where someone was only a one-day cricketer, especially opening the batting. But nowadays, you look at Test cricket, and I mean, you look at the likes of David Warner. He doesn't exactly hold around or hang around, does he? So I think that actually has opened, with Test cricket changing so much and people expecting 4 or 5 and over, the first 10 overs or whatever it may be, the likes of your Hales and Jason Roys have got a real good chance.
Yeah. Oh, that's
I mean, there's obviously a difference between batsmen and bowlers, I think. Bowlers need to be looked after. Joe Root is taking a break right now, but he might say that, as long as he's feeling fine, he'd like to play all formats. I think it'd be very difficult. You're actually suggesting sort of a definite line. They're the one-day team. But the trouble is that there were, there's, what do we got at the moment? Root, were he not rested? Moeen Ali, Ben Stokes, Steve Finn. Is there anybody? Joss Butler. So there's 5 out of 11 Test players in the one-day team right now. Stuart, if he was not rested, would be in it. Jimmy, Jimmy might be. I don't know. Would you choose to play all one-day games now?
If it was a World Cup, you'd want to play, wouldn't you?
I still think I've got something to offer the one-day
that's
team.
interesting. Yeah.
So
But obviously not all the games throughout the year.
it would be difficult to play. Like Stuart said, with 16 Test matches this year, it would be difficult to play all 4.
In answer to your question, I implore the administrators to ask the players to play less than they play now. I think it's a commercial chase for them, and it is unnecessary to play 5 one-day internationals now. A series of 3 would have been adequate and fascinating.
My question to you: if you were a selector and you had a line between different teams, someone like Joss Butler, what team are you picking him in? Because he's an amazing T20 player and he'd win you a game. Fantastic one-day record, but he's the Test future keeper.
I think Mark's point is the most valid one. I think there is a difference between the batsmen and the bowlers. In my day, I was a batsman wicket-keeper, and I would have wanted to play every single game that was ever there, but my opening bowlers would not wanted to do so. Joss Butler, I think the argument for dropping a batsman is that once you're in touch, and you want to stay in touch. So play and play and play and play. I was more directing the point to you guys as our premier fast bowlers. We don't want you worn out. We want you to go to the next Australia series and win it again for us.
Very good point.
It is a good point. Do we have another question, anybody? We got footballing legend Peter Buck.
I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you a question about the difference between the Duke and the Kookaburra, but it's boring because what I'm getting from you lads there is a warmth, and being in football, when I've been successful, it's always been a good dressing room. So I'm going to hit you with this one. There was a lot of publicity before this, the momentum in the New Zealand Test, the young guys you talked about, certain player, Kevin Peterson, you were all talking about, who, from reports, might have been disruptive in the dressing room. Do you think the dressing room is better than the Maverick? Well, it's a good question, that, isn't it? Go on, Mark.
You want me to answer it?
Yes. Well, first.
I think there should always be room for the Maverick. I think it's very important if the Maverick has the talent. I don't think there's any question, and I doubt that anybody would argue that point. I think it's very important to incorporate all styles of person, and I don't think you can make an assumption about a team spirit coming from 11 blokes being nice to each other. Team spirit tends to come from winning. I mean, that's generally. You have time before a series to build a spirit, but it can sure get knocked out of you quick. I mean, the problem with Kev was that he had a couple of opportunities to sort of set things right, and it didn't go that way. And so Andrew Strauss took a very difficult decision because he felt that there was, that his words were the lack of trust, and he didn't feel you could build a team with a lack of trust. I don't know. I'm not in the dressing room. I'm not dodging the bullet at all. But if you're not in the dressing room, you don't know. Even those of us close to a team don't really know. We think we know certain things, but we don't. Whether they be tactics, whether they be fitness, form, we're very close and we think we know, but we don't really know.
I mean, on this summer, the team spirit was incredible. I mean, I don't know. Part of that came from playing a bit of football in the morning, didn't it? Because suddenly we had scoreboards up in the changing room. We had a golden boot. After each test, we'd lift the Welsh Cup and then the London Cup. I mean, it was that created a huge bond, I think, between the teams. We even had player ratings at the end of the Ashes series on our football skills. We had the England football manager come and watch us and give us a team talk. I mean, that played a huge part in us being competitive, but having a great fun element of it. But we won the Ashes 3-2, so I wouldn't change a thing.
Exactly.
That helps.
It does help.
Winning does, like you said.
But
the principle, the answer, surely the principle is absolutely. You have to incorporate massive talent if you can, if it works.
No, I mean, I agree with you. Being the manager and the coach of a football club, and you've got your best player, but what I'm saying is, it's that thin dividing line, isn't there? And by the way, I was at a couple of test matches and seen you play footy before the game. Stick to the cricket.
Well, we're coming close to the end of our time this evening. It's been really fascinating. I think one more question would be reasonable, and that's looking forward to the future of England Test cricket. You two are in your prime, but your late prime is probably reasonable to say, and it's a horrible thing to say. You're slightly later than Stuart. There's an Ashes series coming up in Australia, 17-18, I think, isn't it? Yeah. Do you look forward to playing in that? Or?
I'd love to play in that, yeah.
Great, we'd love you to play that. So my question is this, really. I mean, I imagine that we'd hope to build a team around Stuart, around Alistair Still, around Joe Root, Mark Wood, Ben Stokes and Joss Butler. Do you still see that as the core? Am I right in identifying that as the core of England cricket, essentially? And can you think of any new names that might come in to entice us?
I can't see the team that moves forward being very different to the one that the sort of, I think we used 13 players this summer. I can't see the 13 players being much different. You know, there's always room for new talent, new guys who are getting runs in county cricket, doing well in one-day cricket. So you know, there might be room for James Taylor or Alex Hales, Jason Roy, guys like that will be knocking on the door of the Test team if they keep performing the way they are in the one-day game and for their counties. So there'll always be you know, competition for places, which I think is great at the moment. We've got a good depth there, also in the bowling department. So I can't see the nucleus being much different to what we've had though.
Yeah. So Matt, would you agree? Is this a team, for example, just going immediately forward, that can beat Pakistan in the unusual conditions of the Arab Emirates? Do you think?
Yeah, certainly. Again, I think as an England fan, this is a very, very exciting time for English cricket. You look at the ability and the talent that is in that England dressing room, and they are playing nowhere near their best cricket yet. Because I can tell you now, in 2 years' time, with 2 years or even a year's time, 18 months' time, more experience of playing Test cricket in different parts of the world, in the UAE, in South Africa, against different opposition, that bit of experience added to the just raw talent and ability of the Stokes and the Butlers and the Roots, etc., etc. This has the potential to be a very, very strong England team.
Yeah, wonderful. Stuart.
I mean, a name we've not really mentioned tonight, who I think has got a incredible Test career ahead of him, is Gary Ballance, because I know he missed out after Lords, but let's not forget he averages still 48 in Test match cricket. He was young batsman of the year, I think, the previous year. And he's got a temperament that is very much suited to maybe the old style of Test cricket, but he doesn't want to give his wicket away. He'll bat for you all day. And sometimes we forget that he'd never batted 3 in his life. He was a number 5, and he got asked to bat number 3 for England and came in and averaged 60 and did incredibly well. He, as every cricketer I've ever known, had a bit of a tough period for 5 or 6 Test matches. Missed out and missed an incredible part of the summer, but he will at some stage come back into this England Test team and have a huge amount of success. So I'd look at someone like him being like the rock of the English batting lineup for many years to come.
That's good. Mark, your thoughts?
Well, I think Test cricket's evolving before our eyes into a very high tempo and high maintenance game. I think that England have got natural leadership running through the spine of the side. We've barely touched on Joe Root's fabulous summer in a million ways, not just the 200s. I mean, the innings at Trent Bridge was as pure an innings as you'd see on a very awkward pitch.
And he bowled both
the
pitches.
Catching, the bowling. It was Ben Stokes has got something very special in him. This was an Australian side with some magnificent cricketers, 2 of the greats, Michael Clarke and Mitchell Johnson. And England beat them in a memorable summer of slightly strange, random cricket at times. But I think that's the way Test cricket will continue to go. I think there's a lot of exciting things happening in the leadership of England cricket at the top. i.e. the new chairman and the new CEO, and Andrew Strauss's appointment is spot on. So I think the signs are very good, not just for England, but, you know, with these two still available, not just for the England team, but for the game at large in this country. I think it's a promising period. I just pray that the balance is kept so that A, the pitches retain the right balance between bat and ball, they're key, and B, that the game doesn't lend itself to the danger of 2020 cricket, and that the balance in all forms of the game is retained, and that the longer form is very important and treated as such. And so pastoral care of cricket in this country is very important.
Very well said indeed. Well, it only remains for me to thank you for watching, and to thank our amazing four. I'll thank first Mark Nicholas and Matt Pryor, and a special thanks, of course, not just for their appearance this evening, but for their remarkable performances in bringing the Ashes home to Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad. Thanks all four of you, and thank you here in the audience.